Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to talk about hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction, which I'll refer to as HPV for the rest of this video. And there's two reasons I want to talk about this. One is the teaching that patients with COPD that get oxygen therapy will become hypercarbic in some situations because they are driving down their hypoxic drive to breathe because of the supplemental oxygen. And the second thing I want to talk about is same thing, hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction in the context of potent vasodilator therapy. A classic example is hypertensive emergency. So we'll take one example. Let's say you have a patient, 55-year-old, coming in with hypertensive emergency. They've got blurry vision, headaches, chest pain, their blood pressure is 250/120. They're coming to the ICU with an arterial line and you are starting Nicardipine on them. And their blood pressure starts to come down 20% or so from baseline. You don't want to change it too quickly. But then you notice their saturation starts to drop as well. And now what do? Do you stop the Nicardipine, or what's going on? Why am I seeing a desaturation with a potent vasodilator? Now remember, hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction is an intrinsic property of the lung. What this basically refers to is you are trying to match ventilation with perfusion. And the body is really smart. It's engineered ways to optimize this matching through many mechanisms. One of the most potent is if you have parts of your lung that are not being ventilated, they start to get hypoxic. And those alveoli that are not participating in gas exchange should not really be getting blood. Why is the body going to waste time sending blood to those units if they're not going to participate in gas exchange? It'd rather send the blood to well-ventilated alveoli to actually participate in picking up oxygen, dropping off CO2 and whatnot. So that is the phenomenon of hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. It occurs in different phases. The first phase starts on the order of seconds to minutes, and second phase takes about an hour, 90 minutes or so to really kick in. But once that second phase is really kicked in, even once you restore normal ventilation, we see this in patients who are undergoing lung isolation, for example. It can take many hours before those vessels that are now constricted will dilate again. Now you can accelerate that with things like Nicardipine. So patients who are coming in with hypertensive emergency, all of us have parts of our lung that are not well ventilated. And over time, you've constricted off those vessels just so you don't waste blood, sending it to those parts of the lung that aren't participating in gas exchange. Now you are giving a potent vasodilator, clobetapine, Nicardipine, even things like ACE inhibitors and hydralazine can cause this. And those previously constricted vessels are now being dilated, but they're still not ventilated, those alveoli. So now you're worsening your VQ matching, which is going to result in hypoxemia. So what do? I normally will just provide supplemental oxygen therapy. I'm not going to stop the Nicardipine drip. I'm not going to stop the blood pressure therapy. I'm just going to give them oxygen therapy, nasal cannula, face mask, whatever they need, monitor them carefully, but understand that that's probably the mechanism at play. Okay, second example. Let's say you have a 76-year-old male with a long-standing smoking history, has a history of emphysema and chronic bronchitis, so your typical COPD patient. And they've had a procedure or they're in the hospital for whatever reason, and you start supplemental oxygen on them. And the classic teaching is you don't want their saturations to be above 92%, blah, 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 blah. But there's a reason for that, because if you give them oxygen, some of these patients may actually hold on to CO2. And it has nothing to do with driving down their hypoxic drive to breathe. Think about it. How many times have you actually put oxygen on a patient and then go apneic? That doesn't happen. What's happening is oxygen is a potent pulmonary vasodilator. This is why a lot of patients are on home oxygen as a first line for so many different conditions involving pulmonary vascular resistance. You are messing up your hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction and therefore worsening VQ matching and then going to create some degree of hypercarbia. Why not hypoxemia in this case? Because you're giving them supplemental oxygen. You're not giving them supplemental minute ventilation to blow off that CO2. The second reason is the Haldane effect. So hemoglobin that's not bound to oxygen will bind hydrogen ions. That's kind of your surrogate for acid in the blood. But what ends up happening is when you are giving supplemental oxygen, a lot of this hemoglobin is going to say, hey, I'm going to kick off this H+ ion and pick up oxygen because that's what I do. Well, all that H+ then ends up going through the carbonic anhydrase equilibrium and binding bicarbonate and shifting that whole equilibrium to the other direction. And now what are you producing? CO2. So that's where your CO2 is coming from. Those two mechanisms, hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction and the Haldane effect, are the two biggest reasons why we see hypercarbia in some patients with COPD who are receiving supplemental oxygen. So I hope you all found this explanation of hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction helpful with those two particular applications. Drop me a comment below, subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.